Hello, everybody. My name is Ray. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Today, we'll be starting out our series on Docent Research Group and specifically releasing my dumps of information and research on this corporation. If, in case you're behind on the story, Docent Research Group has been revealed to be a kingpin in this industry of selling sermons, selling exegesis, and influencing the church from a very top down approach. And it's very evident that this is a very woke, social justice, Democrat company, and they have a large influence over the church. So, in this series of videos, we will be exposing the pastors that use Docent Research Group, and we'll also be exposing the churches as well and their employees. But you may be asking, why am I splitting up the findings into several videos? That is a fair question. During my research on Docent Research Group, which is not complete yet, like I still have more blood trails I can sniff out, but I have a deliverable product here. And so that is what I'm reporting in this video, and in the next few videos, I have deliverable product. So there are going to be 3 videos on 3 different churches, and then I'll probably talk about the source for all this information, more on him later. So we have 3 very different churches. 2 of them are Southern Baptist churches. I believe 2 of them are multi-campus churches. And they're all in different areas of the country, very different from one another. Yet, they all have been using Docent Research Group. And I think it's very interesting because these churches are also very on the spectrum as far as how compromised they are on the issues like critical race theory and cultural Marxism. They're on the spectrum and varying places on that spectrum. So, with that said, we're going to be focusing on the simplest story to tell, and that is regarding Redeemer Fellowship Kansas City. And that is Kansas City, Missouri, in case you were wondering. So, Redeemer Fellowship Kansas City is a mega church in Kansas City, Missouri. It is a member of the Southern Baptist Convention. It is also an Acts 29 church. Redeemer Fellowship has been using Docent Research Group since at least 2016. Redeemer Fellowship is also a woke church, and that is what we'll be diving more into today. And it's unclear whether there exists a causal relationship between Docent Research Group and Redeemer Fellowship KC's apostasy. So it's unclear whether there's a causal relationship here. However, what I do intend to show is that these people, Redeemer Fellowship Kansas City, was using Docent Research Group while they were while they were forwarding the social justice gospel. So during this time, they were a client of Docent Research Group. And it goes to show that there probably is a causal relationship. That Docent Research Group played a pivotal role in this woke church's advance of a woke false gospel. That is what I believe took place. And so that this church, this Docent Research Group, fueled the downgrade of this church. So let's talk about my source for this information. My source for this information is a man by the name of Greg Lamb. Now, who is Greg Lamb, you ask? Greg Lamb is a researcher for Docent Research Group, a solo researcher, so he's kind of a little up above a few of the other moonlighters. He is also an adjunct professor at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary, and I believe he's also a pastor in his own right. And again, I'll talk more about Greg Lamb later on, but he is the employee that claims to have had a relation. He claims to have served 3 different churches, and he names the pastors. And the pastors check out, the churches check out. So he names these people, kind of bragging about the clients that he's worked for in the past. And the source for this is also on LinkedIn. It's on Greg Lamb's LinkedIn page and profile. So, with that said, he is the source for this information. And he claims, and let me read his actual words. In February 2016, I began working as a contract researcher for Docent Research Group, an Austin-based Christian nonprofit organization, where I worked on research and sermon briefs for Pastor Kevin Cawley of Redeemer Fellowship in Kansas City, Missouri. And he posts the URL to that church in this paragraph. Later on below, after he talks about the other two clients he worked for, he says, and I quote, "In all these roles, I essentially serve as an extension to the preaching ministry of these growing churches through providing research, exegesis, and connective tissue to help bring God's word to life and resonate with contemporary culture." So, at a minimum, we know that Kevin Cawley of Redeemer Fellowship was using Docent Research Group from, at a minimum, 2016. We know that at a minimum. And we understand that Greg Lamb was providing exegesis for Kevin Cawley and his church. Major red flag, because what does Docent Research Group advertise as their service? They advertise as doing everything but the exegesis so that the pastor can focus on exegesis. Obviously, that's not true according to Greg Lamb, and we know it's not true according to other sources. So Kevin Cawley is mentioned by name according to Greg Lamb. He's mentioned by name as a client. He is the lead pastor at Redeemer Fellowship, Kansas City. Though he does not have a large online footprint, it's a pretty fair assumption from his online profile on like Twitter and social media that he has embraced cultural Marxism. That's a pretty fair assumption to make. This will be more evident in the church materials in which we will cover. Now, he has a different pastor named Brian Key at Redeemer Fellowship, Kansas City. He is the pastor/residency director. I believe that means he has a training authority over other pastors and elders. So he has an authority over other pastors, and he is extremely woke. He's extremely woke, and I'll have screenshots for this in the article. By the way, I should mention that this is going to be an article on evangelicaldarkweb.org, and you will want to check that out. That'll have more screenshots and images. So, if I'm lacking for providing any sort of source material, and we'll cover some of the screenshots coming up here. So, with that said, Brian Key is your woke pastor. He is your woke. He is extremely woke, and, he condemns those who want to fight critical race theory in their local school boards and all that stuff. He's extremely woke, and I don't think it's remotely debatable. Redeemer Fellowship Kansas City is undoubtedly a woke church. As early as 2017, they were promoting critical race theory through training sessions and seminars. This would be after their start with Docent Research Group as a client relationship. It's uncertain whether this wokeness was enabled by Docent Research Group. However, it's fairly implied, given the nature of Docent Research Group's service and the materials that they promote, that these materials were promoted on the endorsement of Docent Research Group, who advertises their services for research briefs on books, articles, and position papers, white papers. These are the services they advertise doing. So let's dive right into it. So let's start with critical race theory. So these are some of the resources they promote on the issue of race. We have W.E.B. Du Bois, the souls of the black folk. We have Russell Moore, John Piper, who's pretty woke, and I've covered that in the past article and video. A lot of Gospel Coalition resources. You're going to see a lot of Gospel Coalition. And you know what organization is deeply connected to the Gospel Coalition? Is Docent Research Group. Docent Research Group is heavily connected and incestuously so with the Gospel Coalition. Their founder is a Gospel Coalition writer, and there's a lot of relationships there. Tim Keller is a major proponent of Docent Research Group, and he's like the head of the Gospel Coalition. So the Gospel Coalition has their fingerprints all over Redeemer Fellowship Church, and that'll be very evident in the resources that they provide for their members that we are going to go over in this video. So that said, a lot of woke voices. Trillia Newbell, very woke art author, and she's also an ERLC fellow. So this is just they're promoting a lot of critical race theory materials here, and you can tell just by the authors. This is where it becomes a little bit more obvious. So this is where we get into their views on politics, political resources, and what's very evident here is that Redeemer Fellowship is promoting material by Democrat operatives. So we have Michael Ware. Who is Michael Ware, you ask? Well, I covered him in one of the last videos I did on Docent Research Group, and he's kind of a face behind a face. Michael Ware is one of the founders of the AND campaign. But before he was a founder of the AND campaign, he was a campaign staffer for the Obama campaign, and specifically worked on religious outreach. So that's who Michael Ware is. He's a hardcore Democrat operative. And I believe that goes for a few of these other names, but obviously we're going to talk about Russell Moore here, who is also a former Democrat, still is a current Democrat, and by no means could be considered a political conservative. And again, Russell Moore runs a very not pro-life ship over at the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission. And they don't believe in religious liberty there either. So Russell Moore's another Democrat. And then Justin Giboney. And I did a video on a speech that Justin Giboney gave for the Gospel Coalition, because the huge connection here. It's a very circular relationship. So, and again, he's another founder of the AND campaign with Michael Ware, and that's why they have a podcast together. So, large amount of Democrat operatives being promoted in this church. And you wonder whether Docent Research Group had a hand in this material. Moving on, this is some more political resources, specifically on the issue of abortion. But however, what do they conflate as a life issue? They conflate immigration as a life issue. Immigration is not a life issue. It's at most a quality of life issue, but it does not compare to the issue of abortion. Being able to invade our country illegally is not comparable to women murdering their children. These aren't the same issue. These aren't even the same league. These aren't even the same ballpark. These aren't even the same sport, as the great Samuel L. Jackson once said. And again, we have some more, a lot of interesting resources here. A lot of Gospel Coalition, a lot of Trevin Wax of the Gospel Coalition, if I recall. Christianity Today, Vox. This is an Amazon book. So, very woke on the issue of immigration, and they're trying to conflate that with the issue of abortion. We got Immigration and the Gospel. That's an article by Russell Moore, the Gospel Coalition. And again, so this is where it heats up a little bit more. Gender resources. This is, again, resources delivered in early 2018. This is all part of a series they did in early 2018. And this is presumably also during a client relationship with Redeemer Fellowship Church and Docent Research Group. And we see there's a lot of shady characters being promoted here in their material on gender. So let's go through some of these shady characters. Beth Felker Jones. Now, she is a theology professor at Wheaton College. And if you know anything about Wheaton College, Wheaton College is extremely woke. They are extremely woke. And to be honest, call me old-fashioned, but I don't trust an egalitarian to teach theology. I mean, if you think that you can rip out pages of the Bible you don't like, I don't trust you to teach systematic theology. Let's be blunt about that. So that's Beth Faulkner Jones. I don't know all of her teachings on the issue of gender and sexuality, but from what I gather, she does seem to avoid the homosexuality issue, at least in some of the reviews I saw of her material. Russell Moore, again. A lot of Russell Moore here. They do have Owen Strachan. He's solid. So credit where credit is due. We got Nate Collins, who's one of the people that wants to subvert the Bible's teaching on homosexuality. And, you know, he's part of that whole Revoice movement ideology. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's a founder of the Revoice Conference. Moving down here, we got a video on complementarianism, and it has Jackie Hill Perry in it, who's a terrible representative of being a complementarian, because you know what she's not really? A complementarian. Sam Albury, who's part of that whole Revoice movement, but he really kind of started it in the UK with the Living Out Network, or Living Out organization, which basically is a pro-gay Christianity organization. And other people have covered that in greater detail. I don't need to go into a deep dive on every single teacher. Rosaria Butterfield is, she is the author of The Gospel Comes with a House Key, and she's another one of those former lesbians that kind of subverts subverts the Bible and what it teaches on homosexuality and sin. So she's another one of those types. And there's another page. So this was when the church wanted to talk about gender resources. Now this is where the church wants to talk about friendship. And I know what you're thinking. This seems pretty innocuous. But, you know, look who they're promoting here is Wesley Hill. And who's Wesley Hill? Well, apparently spiritual friendship, finding love in the church as a celibate gay Christian. So they're promoting and the legitimization of the label gay Christian. And that is an unacceptable stance, especially if you're a Baptist. Like, that is not something Baptists do. We don't legitimize gay Christianity as an acceptable label. That is not biblical whatsoever. So a lot of shady material being promoted by Redeemer Fellowship Church. They promote a lot of shady material. And this is just a drop in the bucket. We know, like, these guys, especially Brian Key, actively promote the AND campaign. And the AND campaign is all about hitching social justice to the gospel. That's what they're in. That's what the AND means. Social justice and the gospel. So that's all I got to say about that. My name is Ray. This is the Evangelical Dark Web. If you like this kind of content, subscribe to the evangelicaldarkweb.org as well as the channel. And also don't forget to like and share this video to get this news out there. This is about exposing people that use Docent Research Group. And this is about exposing a corporation that is a corrupting influence in the church. And this is about rescuing the remnant from this organization's influence and from the influence of pastors who are influenced by them. This is about edifying the church. This is about preserving the gospel and proclaiming it. This isn't about bashing the church. I want to make that clear. The sermon is meant to be a gift for the edification of the church. It's not meant to tear down the church. So that's what we're doing here at the Evangelical Dark Web. So definitely subscribe to the channel, support content like this. And again, let me know what you think about what I think. And have a blessed day, and I'll catch you on the next one.
It's afraid. It's afraid!